Well, we want the building saved because it's one of the most important Category 1 historic buildings in New Zealand, and it's been a kind of iconic building for Christchurch in a whole range of ways, not just religious but cultural and civic and all the rest of it.
Has there been too much spin from the church in regards to just how much damage there is? I mean, we could talk about this till the cows come home, but in your view...
Your viewers won't be able to see this, but...
No, we can edit it in the shot later, and I think that's important.
I'm just handing these around. Look, this campaign is not an argumentative campaign, actually. We're not arguing with the church. We haven't said a word about facts or anything. What we did, we took some focus groups, we commissioned some focus groups as to why people, or what they thought in the first instance of the cathedral. This is qualitative, it's not polling, it's a selective and carefully selected range of people. Why did they think what they did? And the first thing we found is most people, whether they were for saving it or not, believed it was a ruin, and it was beyond saving. Couldn't be saved.
That was my understanding, Jim Anderton. Am I wrong?
No, you are wrong, absolutely. And I mean, we've argued the engineering things of this, but people's eyes glaze over. They don't believe engineers anymore. They've been told by engineers the house is a ruin, it's not a ruin, can be rebuilt, can't be rebuilt. They've lost all confidence in this. So when you start talking detail, they lose it. However, why did you think it's a ruin? Well, everything we see, it's a ruin, every time you see it.
Let me tell you why I thought it was a ruin, based on perhaps my ignorance. I'll put my hand up if that is the case. But we've seen so many drone cameras go inside the cathedral, and with the greatest respect, it looks like it's munted.
Yes.
Are you suggesting to me that that's cosmetic damage, and this can be restored cheaper than what Bishop Victoria Matthews continues to tell the media?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, the whole thing has been, I think, you can say misrepresented or spun or whatever you like. But when you see these photographs, what convinced us to go through this process of showing people what the cathedral's at? These photos were taken about 2 months ago from a helicopter at 500 feet. I was in it. And when you show people these photographs, they cannot believe that is a cathedral that they think is a ruin. They see the front of it and they see it's ruined, and therefore that's all they see.
But let me play devil's advocate with you for just one moment. If I was to take a helicopter shot of my parents' place in Burwood, for example, the roof looks fine. There is absolutely no damage, but their house has to come down because the foundations are absolutely unequivocally stuffed.
Well,
couldn't the same argument be made here?
It could if it was true.
It's all very well to show a picture, and you're absolutely right. To me, this looks like there's hardly much damage at all. But isn't the devil always in the detail?
Yes, it is, and I'm not saying this cathedral isn't damaged. There is damage inside. Some of it's superficial because it's just been left there for nearly 4 years now, and the pigeons have had their day with it and all the rest of it. But it is superficial. There are some structural damage, no question. But there's no inherent problem with the foundations. There's no inherent problem with liquefaction, as there is with the basilica. Basilica is in trouble because the ground underneath it is still subject to liquefaction, and the cost of the foundations would be very, very significant, and they're still working through that. But every engineering report, and even the church's own engineers, they acknowledge that the church can be restored, that it can be rebuilt and restored. It's a question of cost. Now, the church put up a figure of up to $220 million. Of that $220 million, 120 was escalation for not starting the restoration for 17 years. So they just upped the cost of in real terms for 2000 and wherever it was.
I just want to bring Alex into this, because we can talk about the facts and figures for so long, but I do, and maybe I'm wrong, I do sense there's a refocus on this issue now. And I say that because there seems to be insurance issues, EQC issues. People's lives are getting back to normal again. They can now perhaps refocus on wanting to get this building saved again. What are you sensing, Alex, or you just want to? What do you want?
I'd like it resolved. It's gone on for such a long time. There have been arguments, and there's been public arguments around it, and it reflects poorly on our city, quite frankly. It's actually a little bit embarrassing. So, resolve it, sort it out. Me looking at a photograph of the roof of the cathedral makes no difference. Do you know, I respect the engineers, because the engineers in Christchurch have done a fantastic job in terms of rebuilding, new buildings, repairing and all the rest of it. So I won't discount any engineer in any way, because I'm not one. I'm just a person who lives in this city. And look, the cathedral is an important part of our past. The most important thing for me for the cathedral is the step that you walk into the cathedral. And it's curved because so many people have walked over that. And I think about the people that have walked into the cathedral and all of those stories, regardless of their religion. So for me, I just want it resolved. I want it either repaired or gone. I'm sick of the argument. It's an embarrassment.
Pierre, what do you see in this?
I agree that it needs to be resolved, but I also appreciate that the cathedral is a really important part of the city's history. Jim raises an important point. If he's saying the costings that the church is putting out are maybe not all they look to be on the face of it, I don't know, Jim. I mean, is there some way to get an independent estimate of what it really costs in current terms? I mean,
Yes,
that's aside from the pro and cons. That somebody who's genuinely independent can say this is what it's going to cost.
But have you
Absolutely,
you've done that,
we did
haven't
that.
you?
Yeah,
You've done that.
we got a reputable quantity surveyor, the surveyor who was in charge of the costings for the Te Papa Museum. He's a very reputable, by international standards, QS. He took all of the church's own, or the engineers for the church homes, all of their own costings for the restoration. He examined them and said, basically, they're intact, and we don't need to play around with those. But he pointed out, escalation of 120 million. Are you going to start the cathedral now? If we'd have started the restoration of that cathedral 3 years ago, it would be half finished now.
So what would it cost if they started now, do you think?
Well, our cost then was $67 million.
Yeah.
The church had a figure of 97 to 220. Now, they allowed $20 million for fundraising. The fact that in the poll that the press has taken, which is it's not scientific, but it's an online poll compared to itself, the fact now that 63% of people versus 27% for demolition, that's the first time there's been a majority in that poll for restoration, and it's nearly 3-1. I think, as you say, there is a marked change in the attitude of the people.
I think you're right. There's a refocus on this issue. We are simply out of time. Pierre Smulders, Jim Anderton, Alex Dalzell, thank you so much for spending your Friday morning with me, and have a great weekend, guys.
Thank you.
It's News Talks.